Happy to take questions.
Premier, it's been found that former Premier Gladys Berejiklian engaged in serious corrupt conduct. What should happen now?
Look, a couple of things I want to say from the beginning. Firstly, this report's taken way too long. I think that's been generally recognised across the political spectrum in New South Wales. The second point here is that nothing in this report takes away, I don't think, from Premier Berejiklian's handling of the COVID emergency, which I still regard as being excellent. It's important, however, for all politicians in New South Wales and anyone in public life or positions of leadership to understand that we must manage conflicts of interest and, in particular, declare them. That has been a fundamental principle since the foundation of the New South Wales Parliament. It remains the case today, and my government takes that warning incredibly seriously. The last point I'd make is we will, of course, work with parties across the political spectrum about ensuring that if there are appropriate and reasonable steps to strengthen the ICAC in New South Wales, consistent with its operations in the state, as well as fairness to witnesses and potential subjects of that inquiry, we're open to looking at that and we won't close the door on it.
You say the report's taken too long, but no charges have been recommended. What's your reaction to this? Does the length of the report justify this?
Yeah, look, I need to stress that obviously the report's only been handed down moments ago and I haven't had an opportunity to study it in depth. Obviously the government will look at the recommendations that the ICAC has passed on to us, but I do want to make the point that it's been 2 years since the public inquiry took place in Sydney, in New South Wales, for the findings to be released. And if you're an official or a public servant that is the subject of an inquiry, to hold your life effectively up for years and years is just too long. So if there are changes that we can make to the ICAC Act in a bipartisan way or multi-party way to strengthen accountability and community support for the independent agency, then we'll do that. We've already committed to independent funding for the ICAC, which is a key ask of previous ICAC commissioners. The reason for that is that there's always going to be a pressure in terms of what the ICAC can investigate from day to day, because there are obviously a discretion from ICAC investigators as to what they focus on. This prevents future governments, including this government, from effectively starving the organisation from doing its vital role, which is making sure that corruption doesn't take place in New South Wales.
The timing is one thing, but just actually on the question, I mean, Gladys Berejiklian could be rightly aggrieved, right, that she's been described as corrupt publicly in a massive public finding, but yet we're not going to press charges.
Yeah.
Something like the ICAC have to stand up a case, in an actual court of law, if they're going to make allegations of that nature.
Well, there are appeal mechanisms for people who are the subject of an ICAC adverse finding, and I'm not going to make a comment about whether the individuals who've been mentioned make a decision to do that or not. I mean, that's been the case since the ICAC was established in the late 1980s, early 1990s. So, like any judicial or independent investigating body, it's up to them to make recommendations. If they're making recommendations to the New South Wales government, we'll investigate it. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because the report's just been handed down and I haven't had an opportunity to study it too closely.
Is this a stain against the Liberal Party?
Look, I wouldn't make that point. I mean, I've always been very acutely aware that there's been bad apples inside the Labor Party, and I've been a supporter of the ICAC precisely because it investigates us as much as our political opponents. Now, if there are things that we need to do in New South Wales to ensure that we've got public confidence in the ICAC, we'll do them. However, I think ICAC being in existence in this state stops corruption before it begins, because many public officials who are considering a life of corruption or illegal or, I guess, unethical behaviour are concerned about the cop on the beat. That doesn't mean that an organisation like the ICAC or any organisation in the state is immune from reform, and if there's sensible suggestions that have been put forward, we'll look at them.
Just in light of what's happened, do you take the same view as CDED that anyone who's being investigated by ICAC should step down or resign from that role while the investigation is taking place?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. I think that it's important that there's not an automatic resignation or a suspension from public life while the inquiry is taking place. Now, there may be circumstances where it's absolutely appropriate because the evidence is overwhelming, but it shouldn't happen in an automatic way, because people have got a right to have an investigation and the final findings submitted to the public and the Parliament before their political life has stopped or ended. I want to make the point that when former Premier Berejiklian made her resignation, we didn't call for it, and I didn't demand that she step down at the time. And I think there's got to be a discussion in New South Wales about the ICAC being in existence, undertaking the role that it's legislated to do, while at the same time allowing the work of government to continue. The evidence will always come to light. That's going to be the situation in New South Wales with the ICAC, but that doesn't mean that the work of government needs to stop. I'm sorry, I have to go because Parliament's sitting and we're about to have a vote. I understand. Thank you.